IndyCar gamers got a rude early Christmas gift yesterday. Let's talk about it. So, yeah, it was an ugly day in IndyCar land yesterday. And when we're talking about December and when IndyCar is trending in December, it's usually not a good thing. And it wasn't a good thing yesterday, as there was a major controversy, as there were some statements made by iRacing that IndyCar would no longer have a prominent space on that particular sim racing service. And so in this video, we're going to talk about all of the statements, including some made by Dale Earnhardt Jr. himself, who was a higher up at iRacing. And then I'm going to give my thoughts on it. But long story short, yesterday was a black eye for the sport of IndyCar racing, and frankly one that probably could have been avoided, number one. And number two, when you're thinking about young fans and the next generation of IndyCar racing and IndyCar racing fans, you can't do things like this. And this is exactly the sort of thing that's just so disappointing and so deflating as someone who really does care about this particular side of the sport. So let's go to Greg West from iRacing. I first saw this from my pal GP Laps. If you have not subscribed to him and you have any interest in sim racing, I would highly suggest it. But this comes from Greg West, who is a staff member at iRacing over on the iRacing forums. And Greg said, IndyCar license update. Our current license agreement with IndyCar is set to expire on December 31st, 2022. IndyCar has signed an exclusive license with another developer that goes into effect January 1st, 2023. While we are still working on finalizing a new license with IndyCar, it is clear that there will be some notable changes to the way we are able to present IndyCar racing on iRacing. Most significantly, we are no longer able to run an official IndyCar branded series, and there will not be an iRacing Indy 500. You will also see the removal of the IndyCar Series logo from our sites. We plan to continue to support the Dallara race cars IR18, DW12, and Dallara IR05. There will be no changes on limited use and racing in regard to the non-IndyCar series at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for other series, NASCAR, IMSA, etc. Until a new license agreement is finalized, we won't know all of the details, so there may be further changes. And there were further changes very quickly after that statement, another one appearing on the iRacing forum saying that effective January 1st, 2023, the three cars previously mentioned, the Dallara IR18, DW12, and IR05, would not be allowed to be broadcasted on the internet. And a lot of people are confused about this, and I'll try to explain it as best I can. You are allowed to stream the interior of your car as you play the iRacing game. So, for example, if I jump into the cockpit of a Dallara IR18 and I join a private hosted race by another iRacing member, I can race, stream that race, no problem, show that part of the gameplay. I can do it at whatever track I want. I can do the Indianapolis 500 if I want to. No restriction there. However, if I wanted to host an Indianapolis 500, similar to the fun video I did where I put together F1 cars racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over on another sim, Automobilista 2, if I wanted to do a broadcast-style show, if I wanted to, kind of put on my NBC Sports hat and act like I was broadcasting the iRace as though it were a real race, I would no longer be able to do that and presumably be banned from iRacing for doing that. So, that was the thing that just shocked me, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later in the video. IndyCar did release a statement. I first saw it at Kicking the Tires, but it's made the rounds to several other media sites, and this is what the statement reads. iRacing will continue to provide a valuable platform for the gaming community to experience IndyCar. While there will be changes to our presence in the near future, our current car will still be featured on iRacing across current tracks, including the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This was important to us as we worked through our strategy to ensure fans would continue to access our racing across their favorite mediums. We also remain confident in our partnership with Motorsports Games that will produce an engaging, realistic, and enjoyable title feature for the NTT IndyCar series. Ultimately, 2023 will produce the first IndyCar-centric video game in nearly 2 decades while maintaining a presence for the sport in iRacing and beyond. So that's the IndyCar statement, but we were not done with statements, because Dale Earnhardt Jr., who again is one of the bigger folks, both in terms of influence and in terms of sheer ability to get a message out at iRacing. And this is what Junior had to say on Twitter. I don't understand the decision by IndyCar to not continue a decade-long partnership with iRacing. This is such a gut punch for that community. After all, both brands accomplished together, including during the past few challenging years. So let's start breaking a few of these things down here. First of all, it seems to be a bit confusing, because it is a bit confusing, what exactly exclusivity means when it comes to the IndyCar deal, the current IndyCar video game deal. Exclusivity means that outside of Motorsport Games, no other IndyCar game or game that features IndyCar can in any way kind of market themselves as quote-unquote an official IndyCar game. And you see this not just in iRacing, but across many other games. That IndyCar, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they appear in other games. And as far as I'm aware, that's not going to change. But they cannot be an IndyCar game. And what iRacing was in a lot of ways, especially with their official series, which ran on official tracks or the tracks that IndyCar currently runs on, in a lot of ways that they essentially had created an IndyCar game. So what iRacing on the IndyCar side is going to be restricted to, or what IndyCar is restricting iRacing on specifically, is that iRacing cannot do their own IndyCar series with official tracks and the official cars. And we'll talk about the broadcasting rights here in a bit, because it's a little bit different. But for example, you've seen the video on my channel recently. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which of course is owned by IndyCar, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, under the same umbrella, though technically they are separate companies. You can race Indy cars, granted from the Champ Car era. You can race those on Automobilista 2 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with no restrictions, and that is a new license that Risa Studios has been granted to use the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, they were denied very recently from putting a modern Indy car in their sim, so I wonder if any legacy deals will be upheld, such as the one with iRacing, where the cars will continue to appear in the sim, and if you want to do a private event, it seems as though you will be able to continue to race those cars, but it does not seem like there will be any new IndyCar games from this point forward. Let's talk about the broadcasting restrictions. It's my opinion that this is an iRacing call, not an IndyCar call. Reading between the lines here in a lot of ways, I feel as though iRacing, and rightly so, because they were there a lot earlier than Motorsports Games were, feels a bit slighted, and by a bit slighted I mean a lot slighted, by the way IndyCar has handled their deal with Motorsports Games. I think you look at it, especially on the NASCAR side, none of the NASCAR partnership has been affected one iota by the Motorsports Game partnership. NASCAR has maintained a close relationship with iRacing. They continue to have official series and continue to add new cars to their games alongside of Motorsports Games. But I don't think iRacing is totally an innocent bystander either in this controversy. I think they escalated things more than they needed to, but I think they were within their rights to escalate them. I guess I'll put it that way. They know the value of their brand, and so coming out and restricting the ability for people to stream iRaces with Indy cars, I think is specifically a shot at IndyCar, because I don't think they want people to, even if it's unknowingly or unintentionally promoting IndyCar through iRacing, when IndyCar has kind of shunned iRacing in a lot of ways. Essentially said, yeah, you can keep our cars in your simulator, but take our name off of it. It seems as though, and especially with the statement by Dale Jr., iRacing feels that, especially during the COVID lockdown, that they really, and I think there's some merit to that claim, helped IndyCar weather that storm. Now, that being said, during that COVID lockdown, and this is something that I had actually forgotten happened until I started thinking about all this IndyCar iRacing stuff, but IndyCar and iRacing, they had it out quite a bit because the drivers were very critical of the driving model, and they weren't wrong to be pointing out the quirks and problems with the driving model. And as I understand it, iRacing took issue with that, and IndyCar took issue with iRacing taking issue with that. Now, to iRacing's credit, they did a lot of work on the IndyCar tire model and physics model and got it a lot closer, allegedly, to what a real IndyCar, and unfortunately I haven't driven a real IndyCar to tell you, but they've gotten it closer than what it was in the spring of 2020. Now let's talk about Motorsports Games. And this is something that I've been keeping track of, but haven't really been giving you guys updates on because, frankly, there hasn't been that much to say. Outside of what has already been said, which most people know, but if you don't know, Motorsports Games is a company that's in a lot of trouble right now. Their stock price is, pennies, literal pennies. They've had their entire board of directors quit. Their CEO, for a lot of people, seems to be not necessarily doing the right things or the things that are in the best interest of not only the consumers, but the people who are working at Motorsports Games, actually trying to get products out and working to the public. My and a lot of people's estimation, quite frankly, and I've spoken to some people who work at Motorsports Games, and I've asked them about the game, and again, there's not much to say. Originally, there had been a target set for spring of 2023 when this game was supposed to come out, and it seems as though that's what this contract has been written to, and in anticipation that there would be a game in spring of 2023. I do not believe that the game is going to be coming out in the spring of 2023. We have not seen a trailer. We have not seen any gameplay. We have hardly seen any work on it. The only work publicly that we've seen has been some face scans of prominent figures in the IndyCar arena. And with the financial instability of Motorsports Games, if a game even comes out, I'm very concerned about the quality of that particular game. And I guess we'll have to see as the year turns over whether or not Motorsports Games has to go into bankruptcy or receivership, depending on where in the world they actually end up kind of facing the music for their financial problems. IndyCar could invoke a force majeure clause in the contract and get out of it, which may allow iRacing and other video game companies to come back on board. But as you have seen with NASCAR and the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the BTCC, British Touring Car Championship, it seems as though these contracts that Motorsports Games writes are very, very difficult to get out of. And that's unfortunate. The deal that was currently made with Motorsport Games was made under the previous marketing director, who has been recently let go. And frankly, I think this particular decision with the video game, among many other things, was one of the things that led to that decision for IndyCar. It almost has to be, because if you look at it, having an exclusive license with any company is always a risk. You look at the NFL with their Madden game, and a lot of people don't like Madden. I'm one of them. I used to. It used to be a good game, but clearly, over a decade of no competition has really hurt football video games. And, if you had a deal with EA, I could at least spin that as a positive. I could say, okay, there's a big major company that may be making a big push to have this IndyCar game. I understand it's unfortunate that iRacing has to go away, but that's the nature of the business. It'll be better for the sport in the long run. But when you have a chance here, or when you've given an exclusive contract to a company that may not even produce the product, and at the same time potentially not only alienated a huge company, a company that is rising in the video game market, as you can see with the recent World of Outlaws release from iRacing, as they acquired Monster Games, which used to make the NASCAR video games. This is an unnecessary black eye, and this is one that I think is maybe worse for the sport than even that engine delay, because fans of a certain generation, the cars are absolutely the stars, and frankly they still are, but there are different ways to consume and become invested in an auto racing product as a young person, and they're so different than the young people of the past and the way they have gotten interested or excited or invested in IndyCar racing. And video games were the way to do it. And the fact that there has not been a video game, and yet companies like iRacing have seen that market and taken advantage of that market. And now all these people since IndyCar 2005, whatever it was, 15, 16, 17 years ago, the statement from IndyCar says 20, almost 2 decades since there has been a video game. The video game industry has grown so exponentially, and people looking for that fix, that IndyCar fix, or perhaps they even found IndyCar racing through iRacing, or even people who had an interest in, say, Formula One, or sports cars, or NASCAR. They knew that IndyCars were on iRacing service. They probably bought the car. They probably played with the car. All of those people yesterday were lighting IndyCar up. And all of these people are your under 40, predominantly young male audience, exactly the people that IndyCar should either be so desperate to maintain or should be trying to appeal to. There were so many people in the NASCAR community absolutely shitting on IndyCar yesterday, and I don't blame them one bit, because I completely agree with them. But it's so disappointing to see that, because you realize that's the next generation. That's the young generation of racing fans. Those are the guys who are going to be keeping this sport alive over the next decades. And the fact that you were a laughingstock to them, that there were so many memes, and many of them were very funny memes, going around about IndyCar racing, this is potentially one of the biggest disasters I've seen from just like a PR black eye. And it's unfortunate, because I think a lot of it comes down to people making deals who are no longer at the company. But they still have to live with those sins. And the PR statement, and I don't blame anybody for putting out that PR statement. You have to stand by, what the company line is. I understand that, but man, oh man, anybody who's been paying attention knows that Motorsports Games is in big trouble. And I just wonder what's going to happen. And if IndyCar's left holding the bag, and they have essentially upset what is the biggest sim racing name in the sector, man, and all the people who consume that product, or at the very least, just from a pure name recognition standpoint, there will be a lot of young people who know IndyCar because of this controversy and nothing else. You can talk about good racing until you're blue in the face, but when you do things like this, when things like this happen, you start getting concerned about the future. And it's so disappointing to me that I have to talk about this stuff. I wish there was anything else I could talk about, but we've got testing bans, so there's no testing. The car is 10 years old, so we can't talk about that. I don't know. Well, anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble and rant about this. If you did enjoy it, leave a like, or even if you didn't enjoy it, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of it. And if I don't talk to you before Christmas, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, Happy Holidays to those who don't, and a Happy New Year, I think, to just about everybody. We'll see you in the next video.